You're listening to the Maritime Gardening Podcast brought to you by Vessi Seeds. And today we have Stefan Sobkowiak here to talk about organic gardening. I've been writing an article in this recently and I got my head into this thing. And it's not as simple as you might think. And we've got an actual organic gardener or someone with some expertise on that level and a lot of education in that field to help unpack this complicated subject for us. Stefan, how are you doing?
Very good, Greg. Very good. Organic. Is it organic? Is it not organic? Wow. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a topic.
And I should give a quick overview of how, so a little bio on Stefan. He's a farmer and a teacher and a biologist, an author and speaker. He's presented at hundreds of seminars and workshops to a range of public audiences. Taught at McGill University for 8 years. He's a landscape designer. And he's the star of the Permaculture Orchard Beyond Organic, which is how I originally, if you've never seen this wonderful little documentary with all the wonderful catchy jazz music in the background, it's a very inspiring documentary. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, which is excellent, it's just a wonderful, inspiring, thought-provoking, and interesting person to watch and listen to, and you can learn a lot by listening to Stefan. So let's a little bit more about you. Where are you located and what do you do? Aside from what I said.
Our farm, well, basically for the farm, because our farm is southwestern Quebec and about an hour southwest of Montreal.
Okay.
And just in terms of organic, we started off in 92, transitioned, and a transition to organic. So we were certified. So transition takes 3 years. You have to respect all the rules of organic, but you cannot sell your product as organic.
So you had you bought a conventional garden.
Right. It was a
and you
conventional
transitioned
orchard.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 4,000 tree monoculture apple orchard at the time. And then we were certified for 6 or 7 years. And after that, we functioned through a membership. I was asking my members because they changed the rules and rules. There's a pretty thick book. I mean, it's like this thick of all the rules to be certified organic.
Right.
And they changed rules and prices would pretty well double for certification because I was doing several things. And I used to be able to be certified for the whole farm, and then I'd have to be certified for each production. So it favored a monoculture approach.
I mean, you had to be certified for peaches and you had to be certified for apples and carrots or whatever.
If I had chickens, I had to be certified for chickens and ducks. And so anyway, it made it more complicated, a lot more paperwork and more expensive. So I asked members, does it make a difference? And since everybody was coming to the farm to pick, they said, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, we see what you're doing. There's nothing hidden there. So it was no. So I realized, okay, you know what? I don't need to be certified. Certified organic is fantastic. If somebody is, and this is just for people, if you're buying in the grocery store and you go, you know what? I don't know. Does it make a difference if it's organic? Oh, yeah, it makes a big difference. But the certification, really valuable and important when you, as the farmer, are not selling to you, Greg, as the consumer.
Right. So when you supply a grocery store or a fruit stand.
Whatever. There could be 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. It could be, wholesaler, distributor, and so on. The certification, it's a third party who guarantees that, yes, they are doing what they're saying they're doing. And they can do surprise inspections. They can, so it's like, yeah, you know what? You think I'm going to try and get away with it. No, it's a good system. It is very good. And there is work involved in being certified. That's why there is a cost to it. Although it is kind of interesting that being certified, if I could get away with not using certain products, because I didn't need them. I'm organic now. So I wouldn't use things. So it's almost like I'm not using this, and this. Well, now it's more expensive because it was sold more expensive, but it's not necessarily. So some farmers are really doing well because their inputs can be so much less.
Right.
And they're getting paid more. Usually the yield can be similar or a little less, but because of the price difference, you can really absorb quite a difference in yield. So that's
And,
the overall, how the whole system works.
and you were saying you bought a conventional orchard and you had to, so you informed whatever officiating bodies are involved and said, this is going to be an organic garden. And it took 3 years. So
Yeah.
explain that to us a little bit. Is it just
Well,
basically 3 years for like the non-organicness to go away sort of thing?
pretty well.
Is that
Pretty
it?
well. I mean, think of your garden. When you came to your property, certainly it depends what was done before. But let's say you buy a property that somebody was gardening in their yard. You don't know what they were using. Were they putting Roundup on the grass, and now you're going to turn the grass and say, so the 3 years, it's to get rid of a lot of things that could have been there, but it's also to help transition your soil, because your soil goes from being an input, often it's input-based soil where the life is in the tank, like your soil life could be dead. Our soil life was almost dead. Just to give you an example, the first spring we bought after harvest, so they got their harvest and then they sold. And so we bought, but we couldn't do anything because winter came around, and the next spring we started to plant. And in about 100 holes, we found one earthworm.
Wow.
I mean, I had been doing enough things in gardens that I realized, wow, this is the deadest soil I've ever seen.
Right.
Like it was sand, and that's it. Like underneath the trees were where they had put herbicide. So it was just sand, bare sand underneath the trees. The trees looked pretty good because of all the inputs, but it was
just
kind of
fertilizing it basically.
Yeah, it was kind of like a hydroponic system. The soil was just there to hold the plant, and everything was added that the plant would need. So it could work. I mean, conventional can work. People do a lot less drastic than that, but that's the reason why the 3 years. It's not 3 for me and 2 for you and 1 for, no, it's 3. And that's because you're pretty well coming into a system where, unless you can have proof that, for example, that was a
pristine,
a hayfield or an abandoned field for the last 15 years, then you go first spring, you are certified. Because the history of it is, it's not an unknown. It's known, and it's like, yeah, of course, if it's an abandoned field, nobody was spraying an abandoned field.
Or if I bulldozed a forest or whatever, just in principle. I see.
Yeah,
and the idea is the 3 years is that it's basically a organic breakdown.
Right.
A kind of breakdown process.
Yeah. And the reason that you can't sell your produce as organic is you're transitioning. You're not there yet. So they're saying from year 1, when you are certified and you can sell it as organic,
right
now your soil has at least had a chance to restore. And it did. It, like, in 3 years, it was quite amazing, the change that happened. You're going from a pretty drastically soil depleting, but certainly soil life killing system, to starting to bring back that. Now, for somebody who has a garden and they buy a place and they say, I want to do this organically, and I don't want to wait 3 years, because the average person moves after 7. So you don't want to wait 3 years. You could transition in as little as 3 months. Like, I now know how we could have gone in that spring, let's say starting in April. By July, our soil could have been at the level of 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You're familiar with the work of Dr. Elaine Ingham and the soil food web and the compost teas. So if you had made compost tea extract and applied that to your soil, basically once a week for 3 months, and it's not complicated. You could, in a garden, you can use a 5-gallon bucket, just go buy a little aquarium bubbler, put it in there, put a sock with some compost, and just bubble it for 24 hours, and then take that and spray it on all your property. Maybe the house too. If they sprayed for spiders, you may want to do the house. But that's basically all that's involved. And that will it's basically re-inoculating your soil, because I relied on the soil life will have to come on its own and build up on its own. And it takes a while, but
Right.
you could really hasten that. And this was work she had done in California on methyl bromide applied strawberries. So methyl bromide is the ultimate in it's meant to sterilize the soil. So you have no soil life, and they were doing soil tests and looking at the soil life. And it went from like the lowest they could record, virtually dead soil, to applying weekly. That field in 3 months was up to the level of a field that was organic for at least 3 years.
So what is it in the compost tea? Is it nitrogen content, or is it a combination of nitrogen and soil organisms?
It's
Or
really
what
just
else?
soil organisms.
Soil organism.
It's
You're just
just that.
loading it up with
Yeah, because the
stuff.
nitrogen, that's not what's lacking in the beginning. What you're trying to do is you're changing the system. If you're doing conventional with sprays, you're not relying on the life of the soil to feed your plants.
Yes.
You're doing it. You're relying on this product and this spray and that will feed your plants.
You're the life.
You're the caretaker, provider,
Yes.
and everything.
Yes.
So basically all it is, it's re-inoculating, getting the life in the soil so much that, oh, you know what? These critters actually contribute to bringing in nitrogen. And actually a lot of nitrogen in the soil when it's naturally supplied by the soil is just because your soil life is so abundant. Imagine the plains of Africa. That's why Elaine talks about it as the micro herd. It's like the plains of Africa where you get, giraffe and wildebeest and lions and zebras and all kinds of things, and everybody's pooping.
Right. Yeah.
So that's feeding the soil, but it's the same in the microsphere. In the tiny, you have millions and billions of bacteria and protozoans and nematodes and all kinds of little and small insects and microarthropods. And they're eating, some are eating bacteria, some are eating organic matter, and they are excreting a waste. And that waste is basically micro poop. I mean, that's what it is. It's nitrogen rich manure that's naturally in your soil. And now your plant's going, I love this. That's what I always liked the best. And
it's more of that ammonium nitrate and just nitrate itself. So it's plant available sources of nitrogen ready to go. Now I think about when I first started here and the piece of the property where I put my garden eventually. It is what another guest of mine, Keith Reed, calls builder's loam, which is the combination of clay and rocks that they dump to build houses and stuff like that, right? So it was that sort of stuff. So weeds would grow in it, but vegetables wouldn't grow well. But every bed I just put all kinds of horse manure in it, so it was kind of like solid compost tea. I just put a lot of horse manure, some version of aged and not so aged horse manure down. And the beds where I did that, they were fairly productive fairly quickly.
So if you were talking organic, okay, because this is what the certifying agent, because it's somebody who's coming and they'll question you on any input you put in.
Yes.
So you have to have records. I use this, I use that, I use that. Where's the receipts? Where's it? And then where is it from? So if you say, I got horse manure, okay, was it from a certified organic stable?
Right.
I mean, that's exactly what happens.
Yes.
So it's like, no.
Some guy down the road.
Yeah. So that would be one. So then they would basically do a little search and say, hey, you know what? You do have somebody, he's 5 miles further, but he is certified organic. Now you'll need to buy from him because you have a source.
Right.
So it goes that way. They want to guarantee you stay in the ecosystem of organic.
Right.
If you can't, and you say, I need, for example, if you were doing mushrooms, you use a lot of horse manure.
Right.
Well, if you wanted to be certified organic mushrooms, you would have to get them from a certified organic stable. If you could not, and you've done a search for 150 miles around and there's no organic, then you could ask for, and you have to ask for an exemption. meaning I could get it. It's just down the road, but you have to ask to exempt. And they may even go there and ask them, you know, what are you treating the horses with? Where do you get your hay? And so on and so on.
So that's what a certified organic stable would be, a stable that doesn't, feeds their horses hay, that hasn't been treated with too many pesticides and hasn't been fertilized and all that sort of stuff. I see.
So it goes down levels. So when, you think, why is it more expensive? Well, this whole certification adds up. And it's a reason why I remember teaching in Europe, people would always scold me. No, 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 no. You can't lump all organic in one thing, because they were distinguishing. There's industrial organic, and then there's artisanal or small farm organic. So they were like more the purists, because they were saying, you know what, the industrial organic has kind of taken over because of basically the economics of it a lot of times. So if you were doing 25 vegetables, and then you'd go, you know what, it'll just be so much simpler if I grow carrots and rutabaga, and you just do those 2 crops, but you increase your acreage by 25 times, because now you could do it all with a tractor and mechanically. And so it's kind of, that's the industrial model. And then they'll say, okay, we'll apply a feather meal from an organic chicken house or something like that. And so you know what, it is good if you can certainly go that way, if you can, for your garden. Absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to your inputs, and your article is really good. And I encourage people to read the article, because I hope you'll link it in the.
Well, it's only part 1. I got to finish part 2, because I got to bring it all together in terms of what I think the home gardener should. I don't know how I think. I'm just going to say what I think about it. People can think however they want, because I'm going to, I'm kind of maybe small O. And I have a different way of looking at it. I haven't even put, the thing about writing is that you don't know what you're thinking until you try to write it down. And it's a great process. I've got both kids in junior high and high school, and they're like, I don't know what to write. And I just write something. And as you're writing, you'll figure out what on earth you're thinking about, because it is a very odd process. You just start putting pen to paper, and so I've got a very vague sense of where I want this to go, and maybe it might come up in conversation as we go on this evening, where I'm coming from, because I think the home gardener's point of view is there's things you do that are just expedient, and that you can break all kinds of rules. You can do whatever you want, but you've got some overarching vision or morality or ethics or whatever you want to call it, that you want to try to adhere to. But at the same time, you don't want to have a year where you don't get anything, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of, if you look up organic pesticides for slugs, you look at the list of things you have to do. I think I've written an article on this. It's like, you got to pick them off. You use a beer trap. If you got a real problem, that does not work. It doesn't do anything. Because sometimes you've got, like where I am, we have these little slugs that are like a millimeter in diameter.
Oh, wow.
Well, good luck picking those off, you'll have the big ones, but you also have these little tiny baby ones that do a lot of damage, right? Or you'll have something like a flea beetle, right? And there's things you can do to dissuade them or convince them to leave your stuff alone. But then you'll have, an entire bed of something that looks like some tiny shotgun was taken to it from flea beetle. So then you start thinking, well, okay, maybe I should just poison them all. Okay, what's the nicest poison I can use? Start thinking that way, right? But you're not selling it at a store, so it's more about what you're comfortable with, right? But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. How about?
I liked your analogy in the article about bronze, because you were pointing, and it's exactly like, where do you draw the line?
Right.
And your point was, really, you just have to look, is it a synthetic product? Is it synthetic? Because for organic, the idea is it's got a natural breakdown that is much quicker, while a synthetic can have a long residual. It does not mean it's less toxic. I'll give you an example. In the first years when I was organic, I remember getting a call from a buddy of mine who had a large orchard as well. And he called me just because he was so like in the dumps. I knew right away. I thought, what's going on? He said, the helicopter came by and sprayed my orchard because these have as a scout, and the scout would say, well, the level of whatever insect is getting here, you should apply an insecticide. And there are organically certified insecticides. So I think he used rotenone.
Yeah, rotenone.
Which is an organically approved because it's
from
a plant.
Right? Yeah.
Right. It's from a plant, an extract, and it breaks down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't distinguish. If it's an insect, it gets killed. So he was walking in the orchard and he said, it's so sad. He said, I don't hear anything. Like there's no crickets, there's nothing making sounds. So just because it's organic does not mean it's not toxic. Like it's toxic to whatever is aiming, but there's that distinction. So I always think that would be the absolute last resort to something like that. What else can I do? What else can I, like you're saying, the beer traps and so on. Trapping, yeah. If you're in a garden, you could put row covers. You know, if you had a raised bed, a row cover can be really tight and snug against your bed. So something like flea beetles, growers who do market gardens, they've really moved to row covers because for flea beetles, you get complete control and you don't have to apply anything. You need a row cover, but you buy it once and it's good for 20 years.
Yeah.
It will work for a long time if you take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are these approaches you could use. And it's thinking you're going to eat this. And that really is where it comes down to. Like if you're used to going to the grocery store and just buying whatever, you know, you don't know anything about the history, it's conventional and whatever. Are you going to be that strict on your own garden? You're probably going to be more strict. But the other side of it, and this is something I had seen because I went cold turkey. The orchard, that first spring, we didn't put anything. I thought organic meant you don't spray. That was my understanding of it. I thought, well, it's organic, you know, you don't spray. Well, it didn't take long that the insects really moved in and found our place really great.
Right.
And to the point where there were years where I went to buy apples and I had thousands of trees because all my fruit would be just for juice. They were all had different, and for juice, I guaranteed my clients that there was bug juice. And I just said, look, I'll be honest with you, mine has bug juice just like everybody else's, but nobody else would say that.
Right.
So like what do you think goes into juice? Not the number one apples, because that gets picked, and anything that has any defect or has an insect, they throw it on the ground.
The ground apples,
and then it gets picked. And we never picked the fruit off the ground because we had animals. And so we didn't trust that if the apple's on the ground, it may have feces. So we just didn't pick those. Those were for the animals.
Right.
So we picked all our fruit for juice.
Right.
But it really comes down to once you start, it really is, you know, that hamster on a wheel. And a lot of farmers are on the wheel. Why? Because at one point they got on and they started. And a lot of those synthetics, a friend of mine had the best definition. He said, you know, the greatest product for a capitalist, he said, is something that cost in that day, he said it cost 10 cents to make. It sells for $1 and it leaves a habit behind.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so think of it. A lot of those products, look at lawn care, whether it's the fertilizing of lawn care, whether it's the treatment on lawn care, a lot of agriculture is that. You're trying not to because each application costs. But, oh, you know, I have this, I'm going to put it. And so they put it. And okay, you kill that. But what you don't consider is you're also killing all of the support species, all the ones that are naturally there, have built up to a certain level to control them. And so now, what's going to happen next time? I studied ecology, and there's always the predator-prey relationship. So the predators grow very slowly in population.
Mm,
The
right.
prey grow like crazy. They just, their populations in one season can go,
Yes.
especially for insects, can go haywire.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
predators can't grow that fast.
Right.
So what I realized over the years, and I've been at this for 30 years, and I've realized that, you know what? I always have to protect my bottom level. I always have to have all of my pests.
To
It's like
feed your predators,
to
right?
feed my predators. And
Maintain its
if you want that
population.
ecosystem, you have to tolerate that you will have some damage. You will have sometimes a complete loss of, let's say, your cabbage or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It happens and you have to allow it because you have to create an ecosystem in your garden where this pest goes there, but this predator and that predator winter here. And next spring, they'll come out and they're looking right away. I mean, I went from our orchard, we would be absolutely devastated in the summer with caterpillars. I mean, yeah, I was talking about that with my son, and he says, yeah, I remember that, you'd walk in the orchard in June and you thought it was January because there's huge areas that there was not a leaf left on the trees. It would be
Oh,
that defoliated. And it was
wow.
usually like blocks or patches where they started and then they just go from tree to tree because there's nothing stopping them.
Wow.
And that was by far the worst insect. I mean, the ones that affected the fruit are one thing, but when they would go through and because when you lose all the leaves in June, that year, that tree won't produce because it's got nothing to catch the sun and
Yeah.
grow that fruit. So you end up with these tiny little apples left in the fall. And then it has to pull out of the reserves from the root to grow another set of leaves.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So by the fall, that tree doesn't have extra to feed its roots, to put away a reserve. So next year, it won't flower because the tree is just on survival mode. So
Right.
2 years, and every 3 years, it would be a high caterpillar year. So 2 years out of 3, and the trees that were affected, chances are they would get re-affected because they were stressed. They were so stressed for 2 years that the caterpillars just made a beeline for them. There's a reason
Right.
why they were affected.
Right.
And so when we changed and we tore out most of the organic orchard and we replanted, I waited 5 years to say anything because I wasn't sure this diversity would work. And when I started to see that, you know what, I don't see caterpillars, like I haven't seen them in 5 years being a real problem. I always saw some, and it got to the point, and now I'm really excited. It's, oh, good. Even when I see them in the winter, I see these egg masses. I'll leave them on the branch. So I
Right.
leave the pests in the orchard that will cause, because I know that the caterpillars, when they emerge, the birds are at them and they're after them ferociously because it's easy. You got this whole mass of caterpillars, and there's one or two birds that are just coming and they'll empty them. And I have not seen one last more than 3 days when I found it.
Right.
So if I find it, chances are the birds see it. And
Right.
if it's summertime, because they'll have sometimes 2 generations, then in the summer, it's the wasps, and they'll clean them out. So it's really important to keep some pests. I'm not saying let them go crazy, but having some to maintain, because with those predators, they keep your peaks are never high. Like they'll start and then they get flattened out. So I haven't had these explosions like I used to have, even when it was certified organic. It wasn't easy. I mean, I would have had to have treated with organic insecticides to control some of these insects, but I just didn't want to do that. That wasn't
What
me.
did was it the replanting? So I mean, what made them? So you replanted everything. I mean, you cut down all your trees and spliced in new trees, or you just completely replanted altogether and you took away the food source? Did you basically starve your population away? Was that
No,
it?
because I kept about a couple hundred trees.
Okay.
Some of the nicest trees I kept in one area.
Mm,
So basically the caterpillars and whatever still had access for a few years until the new trees grew up.
mm-hmm.
But the big difference was it wasn't apple next to apple next to apple next to
Oh,
apple.
yes.
Once you
Yes.
break that cycle, and even in a garden, I would say if you're going to put 4 rows of something, try putting 2 and 2, or even put 1, 2, 1, 2.
This is your locust
Yeah,
fruit.
put
Yeah.
some diversity. You know, if you're going to put carrots, put lettuce. And then, because the pests that go for the carrots aren't going for the lettuce, and vice
Right.
versa. So the more you can integrate, you don't have to have every plant. No, you could do rows. And I mean, market gardeners, they go by beds. So they'll have one bed with lettuce, and the next bed over here is carrots, and the
That's
next
what I
bed
do.
over there. So
Yeah,
there is a diversity in the garden.
that's right.
And because the problem is we want to simplify things. And when that, I've seen it, I've been there. And if you simplify too much, now you open yourself to, now you would have to go with a lot of inputs.
Mm,
And if you're gardening, you know, in the backyard and you want to really eliminate the need, you can, as long as you keep a good diversity. The soil is so important. I mean, insects don't come on their, like, they don't just appear. They appear because basically, and this is something that in the last 5 years, there's people who are researching this. They've got some incredible information how basically the plant is signaling, is sending out, sometimes it's frequent, it's all frequencies. So they'll send out frequencies of distress. And the pests flying by are just going, oh, that's my signal. And
mm.
they just come in to clean out those plants. It's
Oh,
it's kind of, it's really quite fascinating how when a plant is at a certain health, it's no longer susceptible. Like its immune system is so good that there's no insect will come and bother it, because it's like, no, this is too healthy, because that plant can easily put out a toxin for the pest and kill it.
right.
So it's like, no, I'm not going to lay eggs there because I know I won't be successful. Like, you
I
know,
see.
plants and insects have had long enough to work out where to go and where not to go.
Yes,
And like you could take an insect and put it on a healthy plant and he'll try to move.
right.
It's pretty wild what's, you know, what goes on. It's like if you have a bed, you may have seen, you know, at one end of the bed, they're always hit by whatever. You know, that part there, the insects are always, but at this end, they're fine.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you get into the factors. Well, did you put more compost, less compost, more manure, less manure? A lot of times what we take, we don't consider, and I know in your garden that might be the case. In some cases, it's drainage.
Hmm.
If you take something like a carrot and it's growing, it won't grow into the water. Like it'll grow down into moist soil, but it won't grow underwater. So
No.
if your soil is wet, well, at one point, and if the carrot's basically getting some root asphyxia,
Hmm.
it can be sending a signal, and the insect is saying, "Oh yeah, I'm coming, I'm coming. Wait, Greg, I'm coming." And so the problem with conventional agriculture is they're constantly killing the messenger.
Right.
Like when you think of it, let's say a field of broccoli. The field is doing, it looks good, but all of a sudden, wow, we're getting a lot of cabbage moths. They can't
Right.
tolerate that because those green worms in broccoli, no, they're not too appealing.
Yeah.
So they got to spray. Well, what is that cabbage moth actually saying? It's saying that this plant is below the threshold for being vibrant and totally healthy and having a strong immune system. So let's attack it.
Mm.
But in order to sell a product, the farmer will spray something, kill those caterpillars. Now they've killed them. Now they harvest it because it looks good,
Yes.
but it's basically selling plants then that are already proven to be inferior.
Hmm.
So
Right.
not all of them are sprayed. A lot of times nowadays, because products can cost so much, they scout. So they'll look, oh, you're okay. You have some, but it's under a threshold. You don't need to spray yet. But if it
Hmm.
reaches above a certain amount, that's the whole integrated pest management, or IPM.
That's kind of how I mean, I have what's it called? I mean, it's organic. It's BTK. You know,
Right.
it's a bacteria. So, and I haven't had to use it for a number of years. But if I saw an incredibly high, uh, like it's what's it called? Small white. It's a kind of caterpillar. It's like a little white butterfly,
Right.
and it makes these perfectly camouflaged green things. The first couple of years, I never had them, and then I had an incredible amount of them. But the approach I took was that I would do a poor job of applying the BTK. So, like it would say, apply every week, and I just apply once, and then 2 weeks later, I apply it again. I wouldn't do it anymore. And so you still have a caterpillar population. You still have them there. And I think it's because I saw something you were talking about wasps. And so I thought, okay, well, I want something to draw. I want to feed the wasps in the area, and I want them to see this as a great place to go for a meal. And so I want a caterpillar population. I just don't want them to destroy my entire garden. And after a couple of years of doing that, there was one day I was just sitting in my garden on a sunny afternoon. I was having a beer, and this is the best time. You're just watching everything, right? Observe. And I literally saw wasps going to, it was either a broccoli or a kale plant. I just saw them going to the plant and leaving, and another wasp going to the plant and leaving. And I watched very closely, and I noticed that they were carrying something, and they were taking like infant caterpillars, like
Yeah.
I don't know, baby caterpillars. They were harvesting them one after the other in a way because if you read some of these, organic, they'll tell you to pick them off, right? And I mean, if you've got 3 broccoli plants, I guess you can. But if you've got 20 broccoli plants, good luck picking off caterpillars.
Right.
But it's much better if you've just got wasps. They're better at picking things off than you. And they're picking them off before they can do anything because they're
Right.
tiny, right?
Chances are, if they had any bigger ones, those are the ones they take first, because a wasp will take a caterpillar its own length.
Oh, right.
And I mean, a bigger wasp, that's almost a 1-inch caterpillar. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
really biggest. So what they'll do is they'll try to get the big ones first, and then, okay, we've eaten all the good stuff now, and because don't forget, a little one is 5 trips of little ones to equal one big one.
Mm,
So for them, it's far more energy effective to
yes,
catch
yes.
one big one and bring it.
Yeah.
But
So
then the
I haven't
question,
needed that for a number of years now. I haven't needed any, it's been quite incredible not needing that. I do have slugs, which, if you have a mulched garden, slugs can be, it's a great slug environment. So they're around. But it's not too much of a problem. Anyway, I don't want to get on that topic, but I was going to say, I just spent a week in Jamaica at a resort. And we're there a couple nights. My wife's family is from Jamaica originally, and she grew up going back there all the time, and always talking about the mosquitoes and stuff like that. This resort we're at had nothing, no mosquitoes. But the thing I noticed the first day we were there, and it ties into something you're talking about, I always love going, like I've only been south a few times in my life, but I've always found it fascinating to see lizards. Because they don't have them here in Canada, right? I mean, we have salamanders, but you don't see salamanders. You have to lift up a log. They're underground, basically. They're hiding. You never see them. But when you're down in somewhere hot, you see lizards everywhere, and it's so fascinating to watch them, right? Because they're like little dinosaurs, right? I remember when I was a little kid, we went to Florida once, and I couldn't believe all these lizards because you'd read about them in a nature encyclopedia. I had a nature encyclopedia when I was a kid. If I was home sick from school, my parents would say, okay, stay in your room and read the encyclopedia. You want to go to, you get well very quickly in that situation. But you're seeing all these, anyway, I was at this resort, I was like, where's all the damn lizards? There's hardly any lizards. You're like, where are all the lizards? And I couldn't figure it. And we'd be out in the evening and there'd be no bugs, nothing, right? In this hot 31+ degree place. And in the mornings, I was getting up early to go fishing. Right, I brought my fishing rods with me, and I was hoping I could catch some crazy fish off the shore. And one morning, I was waking up. It was like 5:30 in the morning, and it sounded like someone was mowing the lawn outside. That sound. I'm like, what the hell? Why would somebody be mowing the lawn in the dark, right? But it was one of these machines where they pour the pesticide into the engine, and it just throws out all this, So I opened the deck because I had all my fishing gear on the little deck, and the whole place was fogged in with this. It smelled like diesel, like the smell of diesel, but like diesel plus tear gas or something like that.
So they would
So there's
fog the whole place.
a whole place, right?
Oof.
And that's so I don't know if that was killing the lizards, but it was killing whatever the lizards eat. That's for sure, right? So that's why there was no lizards. I think there was nothing around. There's probably no spiders, nothing flying. Like anything that flies is going to get just destroyed by that stuff, right? And I'm sure it wasn't pest specific. It's just kill everything, right? That sort of thing. And no one there would mind because they don't want to deal with that sort of thing, right? But it's just like you say, the pest,
Yeah.
you kill the pest. So I can imagine, you imagine if like that resort was left alone for a couple of years, how bad the mosquitoes would be there because there'd be nothing to hold them in check at all. Like
It
once they started
depends. I mean,
back,
if you're on a beach, a lot of times you don't really have a lot of standing water because it's
right?
sandy. So the standing water would be some way inland. And because you're right on the water, let's say, yeah, you know what? A lot of times it's just that tourists going, they think every insect is out to, look at all the scare videos that, oh, this spider. Oh, so it's like, oh no, they'll just, yeah, I like going to those eco resorts where it's like there is so many insects. And the last place I was at, I went to Belize. They called them house geckos. I mean, they were geckos that lived in the house because
In the house.
nothing is like there's not even any screens.
Wow.
It's just louvers. So, insects come and go, the lizards come and go, and
Wow.
it's a different way of doing it. But I mean, it's like you're not facing with all these terrible insects because there's a gecko who lives right behind this picture, and there's another one that lives behind the fridge, and another one that they have their territories in the house.
Right, right, right.
So it was like fascinating, but that's what creates an ecosystem.
Right, right,
And
right.
you really just, for a gardener, you have to choose. What do you want?
Yeah,
Do you want to have a desert? I know what a desert was because I bought one
right,
and I would never go back. It's like I wouldn't even go back to certified organic monoculture. Like
right,
never. It's too simplified. My conclusion after 15 years of the organic orchard was that it's
right,
not working as an ecosystem. It works
right.
as an orchard.
Because
It
it's not cost effective to have a polyculture or was that it? Like it's just so costly and so difficult to have a variety of things.
no, actually, it
And
ends up being cheaper because now I realize having a diversity, it so many problems are solved at the core. Like they
no,
don't become problems.
what I meant was if you have a certified organic garden, it's very
Oh,
costly
yeah.
to have. Yeah, yeah,
I
yes,
guess I because I haven't been in it for almost 25 years,
right.
20 years, I haven't been certified.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the rules are because they're always kind of changing.
I
And
see.
so, yeah, you just have to find out what are the rules. You can find all of those online. If somebody wants to say, yeah, I want to make sure that if I ran my garden like a market garden,
Mm-hmm.
would I be certifiable? So it's actually pretty easy. Avoid those synthetics. And I mean, even could I say that some of the organic products are synthetic? They can be fermentations.
Mm,
I think even some of the insecticides are a fermentation of a yeast that's extracted. So is
right,
that natural? Well, it certainly breaks down very readily. It's like,
right,
so the whole thing is if it's synthetic, it tends to not break down as easily. It does what it's supposed to do. If it's a synthetic fungicide, it kills fungus. If it's a synthetic insecticide, it kills insects. And if it's a synthetic herbicide, it kills plants.
mm,
So keep away from those things. And then in the input side, like fertilizer, don't use the things that are, 1 number, 2 number, 3 number, and have no bearing with, like, there's no such thing as little pebbles that you would put in nature, here's these little fertilizer pellets.
Right.
No, because that then what people think, well, I don't do the synthetic pesticides, and that's a big step. But if you're using synthetic fertilizer in your garden, what you don't realize is you're not affecting what you see because it's fertilizer. You think my plants are growing well. But what you are affecting is what's in the soil. So there's a lot more life in the soil than what you see. And the fertilizers, they do affect the populations of living organisms in the soil. So if you can avoid those and the synthetic pesticides, you know what? Your garden's going to do a lot better. If you allowed some of the insect pests and even disease in a way, it's like, well, you might have some disease. Well, use it as, and my mentor from this is a great book, The Soil and Health by Sir Albert Howard. So his big thing, I mean, the quote that I use is, he always said, pests and disease are not a problem. They should be regarded as our professors.
Right.
And it's like, oh, what do you mean? They're there to teach you. They're there to teach you how to get your house in order. So he goes through a whole list of things. Basically, a lot of times it's drainage, especially for disease. It's drainage. It's usually 8 out of 10 times your disease problems is related to improper drainage. Could be a very wet year, but a lot of it is that can be related.
Oh, it's amazing how many plant problems tend to be the simplest thing. Not enough sun, not enough air circulation, the soil's too wet, the soil's too dry.
It absolutely is. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's like, have your little 5-finger checklist and you'd be surprised how you can. And then when you realize it, think, how can I change that? So if, for example, if it's poor drainage, then make a raised bed.
Yes.
Because if your soil is flat and you're growing and the drainage isn't good enough, what if you raised your soil by a foot? So you basically, let's say this is your aisles, you take 6 inches from here and 6 inches from there and you put it on your soil. Now you've raised your bed up. Now you've improved your drainage by 6 inches or 12 inches, whatever.
Yeah.
That will make a big difference, certainly on things like lettuce and so on.
Yeah.
So it's not that complicated, but it really becomes, look, the thing is, doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. And everybody I've spoken to, it's like, yeah, I'm starting to get a hang of it after 30 years.
Right.
I don't know how this system works, but I'm starting to understand a few things. And it's really humbling because the longer you go, the more that you'll come across things you've never encountered. And most gardeners have 40, 50, maybe 60 seasons that they're going to garden. Maybe if they're lucky, they can go to 70. So you got 70 seasons to try things. And what I've noticed is if I learned a lesson 10 years ago, I'm far more likely to do the same mistake 10 years later. And so you do something, you go, oh yeah, that didn't work. And then you forget about it. It's like, yeah, I learned my lesson 10 years ago. It lasted for 4, 5, 6 years. And then you forget that that was a problem. And then you do it. And then I'd go, oh yeah, now I remember I had that same problem like 12 years ago. And if you don't
you can do things wrong and everything works out fine, right? Because it's a question of, and this is not something we're not taught in school. I have a government job, so it's something we always have to think about is a risk, right? So you could be doing something wrong and it just poses a risk. Like if you drive to work with no seatbelt on, it doesn't mean you're going to die. It means there's a risk of dying, right? And you could do it every day and it's fine, right? But you have a minor fender bender and you get brain damage because you don't have your seatbelt on, right? And it's the same thing. If there's something you're doing in your garden that, you're telling me, Greg, don't do that. That you should not do that. And I'm like, well, everything's fine. Well, it's because I'm taking a risk. And so it could work fine for 5 years, and then I have just 1 year where some slight change happens, and now it's like driving with no seatbelt. And the whole garden's a complete catastrophe because I didn't do that thing like rotating your crop or whatever, some conventional thing that every gardener has been saying to do forever. And well, I don't do it, so you don't need to do that. Well, maybe, maybe you've discovered some new thing. Maybe you're on some whole nother level, or maybe you're just running a risk every year and getting away with it.
Exactly.
You know?
That's the better one. Yeah. I mean, when, like you say, conventional wisdom, there's a reason why, it's like common knowledge. Yeah, everybody says, like I had
Or the
one
old
example.
timers say this thing, the old timers, they used to do that. Oh, well, they're old. Screw them.
Yeah. I had one case where I had planted a bunch of black walnuts along our
Oh, yeah.
driveway.
Yeah.
And I looked, and yeah, the books say, that apples don't go along with black walnut. And I'm looking at my trees, and so I'd have my black walnut growing and my apple tree right next to it. And in the next trio, I'd have another apple tree. And I said, they're doing fine. I don't know what they say in that book. I guess it's a question of the soil, or it's a question of, my plant isn't stressed, isn't that? Well, what I didn't realize is there's two phases in a tree. There's a
Right.
juvenile phase, and then there's the adult phase.
Uh,
So when that walnut started to produce nuts, everything changed. Like when I first started to see nuts, the next year I started to see apple trees really going downhill.
oh,
It was like,
right.
wow, as long as that tree, it's vegetative, its energy demand is much, much lower. It's just growing wood. But when it starts to flower and produce nuts, whoa, now its needs are at a different level.
I see.
And now it goes, you know what? That space here, this is my space. I've got my roots here. And no, you're not going to be bothering, and you're not going to bother me.
Oh,
And
so the roots would change the soil chemistry in some way.
oh, they can exude it's called juglone, and it's because the family is Juglandaceae. So they all can put out this chemical, which is really like an herbicide to certain plants. And it's not, excuse me, it's not to all plants, but to certain plants. So first my apple trees disappeared, then my plum trees disappeared. My pear trees, most of them are still staying, so they're not as susceptible. But the distance, it's like every 2 years, I got another line of like where apple trees are this far from the walnuts. Now they're hit. And 2 years later, the next trio. Yeah. So that's where I'm realizing, you know what? The roots of a tree don't go to the drip line. That's baloney.
Yes.
They pretty well go to the height of the tree. So
Right.
if my trees are 60 feet tall, now they're about 70 feet tall.
Right.
I could draw a line 70 feet from the tree, and
Right.
those apple trees are hit.
Wow.
And so it's like, yeah, it's cleared out about a good 25 trees just from those. But now I'm replanting with mulberry, which doesn't get affected, and I could put pawpaw in there and so on. So it's,
I see.
I'll just change what I put in. But yeah, if conventional wisdom says don't do it, there's a reason. Oh, I'm feeling lucky. I think I discovered something. No, you just haven't been doing it long enough to have the risk catch up with you.
Yeah, yeah. So we're running out of time here, but how would you contrast? I mean, the title of my article, and I was hoping something we could play around with here, is what is an organic garden? And since you're a permaculture, you've been an organic gardener, and you are now a permaculture orchardist or horticulturist, or however you want to define that. But so what is what is an organic garden, and contrast that with a permaculture garden, if you can.
Good question. I mean, I think it really has a lot to do with the complexity. Like having seen all spectrums, I saw when we bought what was conventional.
Yes.
And then I saw organic because we transitioned. We were organic for a bunch of years. And then getting rid of it and restarting. The big difference is just the complexity. And basically, my goal was to recreate an ecosystem that works. So that will support the insect predators, that will support the bird predators, that will support everything that in that area would normally live, and they can coexist, and they're part of, like, maybe I don't like having a skunk every night, but you know what? The skunk does an amazing job of getting all of the, let's say, the grubs.
Grubs, yeah.
So you add layers of complexity, basically like letting more and more creatures into your garden.
This is a
When do you
permaculture.
go, right?
Right,
When do you go from organic to permaculture? I don't know.
right.
It's not like, for me, because I took out and I restarted. I mean, at the base, it restarted with, I think I had apple. Now I have apple, pear, plum, cherry, mulberry, nitrogen fixing trees, black locust, honeysuckle, redbud, and so on and so on. So
Right.
I went from one species of tree to I don't know how many, and that's just species, not counting cultivars, because
Hmm.
I had 11, and now I had planted 100 cultivars just of apples,
Right.
and then the other ones as well. So it's just, you're tending towards a more stable system, and that's what diversity does. If your system is too simplified, it's not so stable. You can have erratics happen. You can have an insect outbreak and so on. But when you have it far more diverse, a lot of things, just like I say, they just take care of
Well, and I
themselves.
think it's more like what a garden would have been like in medieval times, or times
Yeah.
of peasants living on, the land of a lord, where you wouldn't have one peasant. Okay, we're both peasants and we each have 4 acres of land, and you grow carrots and I grow cabbages. That wouldn't be the
No,
case.
no.
You'd have pigs and you'd have chickens and you'd have turnips and you'd have cabbage, and you'd have a bunch of different things, and you'd have some wheat and or whatever, some oats, or you'd have all these different things, right? And some years might be a bad cabbage year, or one year
But
might be a bad.
cabbage is
Yeah.
1/20th of your crop.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
everyone just farts a little less that year. There's less cabbage.
Yeah. No, and you'll never lose. You'll rarely, when you do that, you'll rarely lose it all. Like, you
Yeah,
lose a percentage. But like you're saying, risk is a great analogy, because
right.
if you're growing one thing, let's say you love tomatoes. So now in your garden, you're growing tomatoes. What do you have?
Right.
I have tomatoes.
And I'm good at it. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah. Well, that is taking quite a risk. I can pretty well guarantee that you're going to have tomato hornworms.
Hornworm, yes.
You're going
Yeah.
to have tomato blight. You're going to have, why may I, many people get fooled because they do that and they go, I had nothing. Yes, but it was your first year. You haven't
Yeah.
allowed, like, your pests have just gotten go. Once they're in and they're established and they're wintering, oh, now you have a setup that the next year your
Yes.
problems escalate. I know people who have done it with garlic. They thought garlic is a great crop. We put
Mm,
in, 2 acres of garlic, and then they didn't rotate, and they said, I
mm.
grew it and it was no problem.
Oh,
Wait. And then the second and the third year, boy, they could get wiped out with this and this and this
oh,
disease.
like a nematode or white rot or whatever. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I like that. Your risk is true. You're just, the 1 year you can usually get away with. But if
Yeah.
you're going to try that same thing a second, the third year, especially like we're saying, if you want to do it organically, now you're not going to nuke your insect. You're not going to, completely eradicate this, that, or the other. You're taking a lot more risk. So by diversifying, think of, what do you like to eat? That's the simplest thing. Like, we go through our list. What are we going to eat? Yeah, we want Brussels sprout. We want rutabaga. We want potatoes. We want tomatoes. We want cucumbers. We want pepper. We want, so we just basically go, what do we want to grow? What do we want to eat?
Hmm.
And then we grow that. And what you were saying with your whitefly, which is the green worms, it's a,
Yeah, yeah,
cabbage whitefly.
yeah,
Not whitefly, sorry, white cabbage moth butterfly.
yeah, yeah.
If you grow one plant, I don't know which one it is. There's one that's just that much more attractive to them.
Right.
Let's say,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kale. It's probably not kale, but
They love kale. I mean,
okay.
kale. I think kale. I'd have to say kale is they like cabbage too. They like kale and cabbage are
Because
the
it's
most
the same plant.
pest-ridden things, yeah, it's the same family. And there's particular types of kale. So the
Yeah,
kale that I find the best tasting kale is the one that gets attacked the most. Like the kale that are sort of bitter and not so good. Those like curly kale. The one that's really popular in the store, curly kale, is probably the least good tasting kale there is. I've got other kale, like a Siberian kale, which is a very different shape, big, long, tender, succulent leaves. It tastes, my whole family prefers it. You can just tell by when your kids get seconds and stuff like that. And of course, if it's a bad year for whatever, everything goes for it. They just love it. And some of these Asian greens, uh,
oh yeah.
pak choi and all these different sort of things. Everything likes those because they're even sweeter than
Right.
kale. Um,
So
so
what you can do is try put 2 or 3 somewhere over there, because if they prefer it, and that it's called a lure crop. You're
a lure
basically
crop, yeah,
luring your pests to that one.
yeah,
And if you say, well, I don't want to treat the whole garden, then you can treat that one. You can treat those 2 or 3 plants, because then you'll already reduce your population maybe by 75%. So you'll still have a few, but most of them went there. And
right,
that's
yeah,
just what you were saying, sit down with a beer and observe.
yeah.
And that's where you get those little nuances. You go, oh, look at that. They're always there first. And so there's farms that they put in a whole row of a certain plant just to attract, so that then they're 50 rows here. The insects, instead of going there, they go for that one row, and then they'll treat that one row, which isn't even a crop sometimes. It's just a wild plant equivalent.
Mm.
And that's how they lure the pests into their other crop.
I haven't done this for a couple of years, but I used to let a number of my open pollinated parsnips go to flower. Okay. And when a parsnip goes to flower, it makes this 4 foot high. One parsnip makes this enormous, almost like a bush
Okay.
of flowers. Okay. Um, when they're fully flowered and the seeds are starting to form up, the whole thing gets covered in, it's the only thing I've ever seen get attacked by aphids in my garden. Um, and when it's covered in aphids, there are all kinds of things that show up to kill the aphids, right? And so you've got aphids attacking something you don't really care about. You're still going to get the
Right.
seeds, right? Because they're just attacking, like they're not threatening the plant in any meaningful way. You're going to lose some seeds because they're attacking the flowers. But so you lose 50% of your flowers and you still have 6,000 seeds, right? So who cares, right? But the thing is just swarming with not just wasps, but like all these like many predatory categories of fly, right? Flies that attack pests, right? And what you're doing is you're saying, hey, you know, have babies near this, you know. So the last couple of years I haven't been planting them. I just keep forgetting to leave one in the ground. No, the last couple of years I've been growing hybrid parsnips because I like them.
Okay.
They're big and they're fat and they taste good. And I haven't been growing the heirlooms I was growing. So there's no point in letting, you could let a hybrid go to seed, but the seeds are just useless. So I haven't been letting them do it. I just pick them all and use them. But I might want to go back to just letting one of them make these big flowers because it's just a haven for all these different kinds of predators, right? I have to rethink that approach.
That's a good point of adding flowers into your vegetable garden.
Yes.
Like, people think, well, this is my vegetable garden. Who said there can't be a mix of perennials, annual flowers in your vegetables? That's a good strategy, because then you really feed the predators, because a lot of them feed on the nectars.
Yes. Yeah, it's the same thing with when you let a kale when you let a kale go to flower. So a kale takes a whole nother year. It's a biennial, right?
Biennial.
So's a parsnip for that matter. But again, it's like 3 feet high and it's covered in these yellow flowers and it's swarming with things. Or you still get all kinds of kale seeds, right? All kinds of them. And if it's a good variety, like what I used to do is I got to do this year because I keep putting it off. among my own Siberian kale, which are just my own. I bought transplants years and years and years ago at a garden center, and I left a couple on the ground and they went to seed, and I kept, so I had red Russian kale.
Mhm.
I saved the seeds, and the plant that resulted from that wasn't red. It was like had white vein, and white and green. So
Hmm.
it resembles what is called Siberian kale, but that's not what they came from. That wasn't the parent. I don't know how it all happened, but they tasted better than the original one. So I saved the seeds. And every couple of years, I'd let them go to seed and save those seeds. But I've been lazy the last few years, and I've got like one of these of kale seeds, right? But one of these years I have to, and where I live, if that particular kale isn't hardy. So if I
Okay.
leave them in the ground, they die. Most people, they leave kale in the ground, it survives the winter. But I find here they die every winter. So I have to
It,
cover them with a dome so they can survive the winter,
hmm.
right? But if I do that, I get this kale tree next year with all these seeds. And it's just a great place for all these different, pests to hang out, and the things that attack the pests to hang out, and then I don't have to care about it because I'm not eating that. Right? So it is a good way to get around that. Okay, so would you say that the fundamental difference between an organic garden and a conventional garden is just a question of inputs, where if I have a conventional garden, I can just buy 12 12 12 or 6. I can buy fertilizer for whatever I think I need for my plants, and I can use any pesticide I want and any herbicide I want, as long as it's within the rules. If I'm not doing something in my backyard. Um, and if it's an organic gardener, I'm basically doing the same thing. It's just that my fertilizers and my pesticides have to be organic, right? They have to be whatever that means, non-synthetic, I suppose. Or I mean, technically a great organic fertilizer is I take, my watering can, and I pee in it and I fill it up with water. And now
That's
I've
one
got
of them.
fantastic fertilizer, and it's completely organic. But there's the thing I talked about in my article where there's this purity issue, right?
Yeah,
Where,
that I would put a caveat, because if
yes,
you're doing that and you're on any kind of medication,
yeah,
I wouldn't say that's totally organic, because that medication may not be, it's
breaking
probably
down.
a synthetic.
But
And so,
what if I ate carrots? What if I just bought carrots from a regular farm, and then you're just using pea as an example. Well, let's say, the night before I ate carrots from a regular farm. So the carrots were not organic carrots. Um, as a home gardener, like, do I really need to, you know,
I'd say as a
I'd say
home
like
gardener,
it's how organic does it,
yeah,
it's a just question of your comfort zone, I
right,
suppose, like it's one thing if you're making a product to sell and
yeah,
you're telling your clients this is the
right.
most organic thing ever. But yeah, if it was your own backyard and it's just for you, um, yeah, I guess I think that's where I got hung up on these things where it's like, I don't know what they fed the horse and I don't care. And I don't know what was in the carrot that I ate last night and I don't care. That sort of thing. I'm pretty sure it's organic enough. It's certainly more organic than most of the stuff I could buy in the store. I grew it in my backyard. It's um, yeah. How concerned do you think a home gardener should be with that sort of thing, or it really depend on the person and what their comfort levels are?
It's basically the organic, like the certifying book. It's a set of rules.
Right.
Why are there so many rules? Well, because you've got to draw the line somewhere. If you're
Yeah.
saying it's this and it's not that, then where is the line there between this and that? So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're basically creating a line that has a logic to it, hopefully, um, and basically just don't forget you are eating it.
Yes. Yeah.
So like my rule is that I want to put on my trees and my fruit
Yeah.
that I grow for me, but I grow for many families.
Right.
I want to put something that, if I'm not concerned, that was been for a long time, I'll put something if I can eat that thing. So that's why we've been using whey as an equivalent. It's not a fungicide, but it does actually does better job than a
Mm,
fungicide, not of killing fungus, but of outcompeting it.
mm.
So because whey proteins in all kinds of edibles, whey is a fantastic thing. I mean, I could take it before I spray it, I can drink it, and it's like, oh yeah, this batch is quite salty. Whatever cheese they were making,
I
they put
see.
a lot of salt in it.
Right.
And so to me, that is kind of an important determinant. I want to say, you know what? If I wouldn't be afraid of getting it on my skin, because anything
Yeah.
you get on your skin, it's in you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all it is. If you spill gasoline when you're gassing up, it's in you. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, the quicker you get it off, the better. But
Yeah.
that's why those patches work, because it goes on your skin, it goes in you. So think of it that way, and then you will be ingesting it. So it's, I guess it comes down to the good, better, best. You know, what you're doing is a good. Can you do better?
Hmm.
Well, what could be the best? So keep the best in mind and think, what can I do better?
Right.
And just follow that. I mean, the point of gardening is to enjoy it. It's not to
Yes.
guilt trip yourself. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd say, when in doubt, do without.
Right.
So if it's like, oh, you know what? I have this, I could put this, or I could not. And what I found over the years is, if you don't, because I didn't, a lot of those problems are resolved with patience. It's like the pests are there. If they're in good enough number, the predators, I know they're coming, but they may not have had a visual impact yet, like your caterpillars and the wasps.
Mm.
You know, you didn't notice from one day to the next that there was a little less. You'll notice when there are, and then you'll notice when there aren't. But
Yes.
the in between, so a lot of times people treat when you're in the in between stage, you go, there are some, I'm going to do something. I'd say practice patience,
Mm.
and you could be amazed. Nature, if I like to say, if you take one step towards nature, nature will take 10 towards you.
Yes. I
Like,
remember you
it's not
saying that.
one to one.
You
It
said that
really
in your
is.
video. Yes.
It is so much. Like, you're making an effort. You are looking to go towards an organic garden or a permaculture garden.
Yeah.
And it's almost like nature knows your intent. If you're with that intent and you're not with the mindset, what can I go out there and kill today?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
honestly, nature will meet you. It's like there'll be something will be sent and something will happen that will help you. And I mean, it's so much more enjoyable doing it that way than
Yes.
thinking, oh, I don't know any farmer who wakes up and goes, oh, I can't wait to get out there and spray this
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that. They don't. But
Well, and all those things cost. I mean, even a conventional gardener, all those things cost money,
right,
right? Like they don't want to. It seems like, well, I remember asking the horse stable down the road. I said, you guys, um, give your horses deworming stuff. How much of deworming stuff is in your manure? And she said, that deworming stuff costs money. Like, we don't just stick that in our horses every day. We go broke. Like, if the horses looks like it's having a problem, we have the doctor look at the horse, and the horse tells us if we need to do anything at all or if it's going to go away. And if we need to do something, we do something, and it costs money, right? So we don't want to do anything unless we have to, you know.
right,
And to pick up on a point you made earlier, like, there was a video I did once where I was talking about slugs, and I said, like, are all slug problems a problem or something like that, right? And I was showing a potato garden, and you could see uh, some of the foliage on the potatoes is just riddled with slug damage, and there were slugs everywhere. And some of the foliage was fine. And what you could see was that the foliage that was in full sun was being left alone. And it was like the stuff underneath, because anything in full sun, the slugs are in danger, right? And I mean, that's the foliage you don't want bothered anyway, right? Because that's the foliage that's collecting all the energy anyway. And so stuff underneath that really doesn't matter. It's getting partial sun, and it's the only place that's safe to be a slug because you'll get dried out or killed by something. So the slugs are attacking the foliage that doesn't matter.
So
And
what
there's
happens if you leave a leaf or two at the bottom? That's
nothing.
slug food.
Yeah, just and the slugs are making slug manure, right? Like everything that goes in a slug comes out of a slug. And by the way, that's just as good as worm castings, from your garden. It's all manure. Manure's, it's all manure. So those slugs, I don't care what they do. They can just, and there's going to be, those are the slugs that are feeding the garter snakes and the toads and the birds and, the slugs and snails that eat those things. So they're not a problem, right? So why would you treat that garden with slug bait? There is organic, there is organic, relatively benign slug baits you can use. But why? You got to pay money for that anyway. If you don't even care about the environment, you just care about money, right? You got to pay money for that stuff. And what's the point? I mean, this is almost meaningless foliage. It's feeding something that's turning it into fertilizer, and that thing's feeding things that deal with other pests. So there's really no point in even thinking about it, So yeah, and I also think, like, when it comes to how orthodox you want to be about your, again, if you have a market garden, you have a certain quality level or a certain assurance level or just rules you have to follow within, the growing, within the practices of the growing you're following. But if it's a backyard garden, I see it like the speed limit. Like when I drive to work, the speed limit's 50. I don't go 50, I go 60, sometimes 62, and sometimes it depends. Like, so if I see kids, I slow down to 40, and if there's no one around and it's the time of day when there's nothing around, I might go 62, 63 sort of thing, in the 50 zone, that sort of thing. Because if it's my own backyard and it's just my food and, and yeah, it's different when a standards organization is making a rule and they have to ensure every rule has to have a margin of error around it, and that sort of thing. Otherwise, if you just told every organic gardener, oh, this is what we'd like you to do, but you can kind of do whatever you want. Well, I mean, they're all trying to make money, so there has to be a line, because they're going to go to the line every time. Unless they're the most ethical people in the world, they've got to make money or they're out, regardless of what they want, unless they're independently wealthy. So yeah, I haven't decided where I want to take this article, but it's somewhere along that where you have to decide, like, capital O, is it small o, that sort of thing. I think if you're, what I've always been drawn to the permaculture approach is that it's organic just by nature of how it works, right? It's side effect. The side effect of it's almost, it's, if you try to have a permaculture garden, it's going to be organic. It really can't be anything but, right? Because your inputs, right? And you don't have as many inputs if you're doing it well, or you're not going to need as many inputs. So anyway, that's where I am with that.
Yeah. Yeah, my professor used to teach us that there's 7 models of production. So there's a few conventional, and then you get into organic. And he said organic is really a substitution model, like you were saying. Yes. Instead of using these products, you can use these products. So strict organic in terms of at least the minimum, you're just changing one thing for another. You haven't changed your system. You haven't diversified. You haven't gotten away from monoculture. You're still doing that. You could be organic, but you're just using organically approved products. Then he says, then you go into biodynamic, which is a step above. And then the last one, I was learning this one, we didn't even know, but permaculture, but he called it, there should be a redesign model, where
Oh,
you
like
redesign the
permaculture wasn't in
system.
the lexicon at the
Yeah, it
time.
wasn't even around yet. I
Right.
was learning this in the early 80s.
Right.
And he said it should be a redesigned model where we take the system and we design it to not have to do all these. And that's
Yes.
the beauty of it, is you set up the system, and in the long run, like I'm going to do a video that we maintain a 6-acre permaculture orchard on a half a day a week.
Mm.
Like the maintenance time after the trees are mature and they're set up, because we train trees and so on, the maintenance time is crazy how low it is, because we don't have to intervene. We
Right.
don't have to solve this problem and solve that problem. The system takes, so you're designing a system for long term. Keep an
Mm-hmm.
eye on the long term, good, better, best. Keep an eye on the best.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see, like you say, by nature, it's organic. But it's more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's by design, it takes care of so many things that you may have used to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if you have a garden, add some fruiting shrubs, add some fruit trees,
Mm-hmm.
add flowers, add a
Yes.
whole load of herbs. Herbs are incredible insect repellents.
Mm-hmm.
Add diversity, and then watch what happens. And you could be absolutely, amazed how many things that you think back, oh yeah, I used to have to do this or that. And a lot of these things just solve themselves if you don't set the system back. If you don't think I have to do something because I need to intervene. And
Yes.
now, as I was saying, you destroy your base ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're on that treadmill.
Yeah, I'm
So,
curious to know. I put an enormous pond right in the middle of my garden last year, and by the by some point in August, there was so many frogs in the pond. I had goldfish in the pond, okay, and the pond was designed to uh, provide habitat for the goldfish. So I had the right number of goldfish for the size of the pond. Then all these frogs show up, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden I got foam on the pond, right? Because it's not just the fish using the bathroom in the pond, it's all these frogs using the bathroom in the pond. And so I had to drain the entire pond and replace the water just to lower the nutrient levels, right? Because it's a new pond and it doesn't have enough vegetation in it to handle that yet. But I'm curious to know the effect of having all of those frogs in the gardens going over the long term, right? Because uh, they're going to have. I mean, I know they're not going to. Their babies are not going to survive in the pond because I've had enough ponds to know that the goldfish eat all the frog eggs. Right, but they're just, they're going to have their babies somewhere else and they're going to be drawn to the pond because it's a good place to get an easy meal, I guess. But just having all those frogs in the garden, and then the snakes that go with the frogs, I'm really curious to see how it affects. I mean, I just built the pond because I like them.
well, you're adding a whole level of ecosystem.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now all the ecosystem benefits of those frogs, they're in the pond. But if they see a slug moving a foot away from the pond,
yeah.
I guarantee they're not, oh, I can't get out of the pond. I've watched them, and it's like
Oh, I'm sure they like at dawn and at dusk when it's misty, and
yeah,
they don't hit. They're amphibian, but they don't have to worry about staying dry
moisture and
or staying wet. I'm sure they go hunting at dawn and dusk, and they
yep,
go out into the garden where there's all these slugs and things like that to be found.
yep,
And then there'll be other things hunting. I'm just really curious to see how it affects.
yep.
When I first had my garden, we had garter snakes everywhere. And then we had 2015, we had a bizarre year with snow and stuff like that. And I didn't see snakes for about 5 years. It's like they were all just, there must have been some place where garter snakes have these giant
Hibernaculums, yep.
sex piles that they sleep in, sort of thing. So they all disappeared. So I think like one of those, I think a biologist suggested they couldn't get out when they're supposed to get out.
Or what could have happened is they're like, it's a newer development, and they could have this. It could have been in the backyard of some house, and somebody decided we don't want this rock wall or these pile of
Oh,
rocks.
they got
They could have
bulldozed.
destroyed, yeah, they could have
Uh,
destroyed the hibernaculum. And
uh,
one pile, I mean, they can radiate for a couple miles in all directions.
yes. That
So
could have
they
been it.
all come back there to winter, and that's where you
Mm.
say those sex orgies, that's where they mating balls and so on.
Yes.
And then from there they spread out in the spring. But if that habitat is destroyed, you've basically set the whole population in the surroundings. It'll plummet for a time until they find something else to replace that wintering habitat.
So when I made the pond, at the end of the pond, I made a pile of rocks 6 feet high.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
As long as they can get in between the rocks.
Oh yeah, they should, because they're bigger at the bottom than there. And I put a pile of logs next to the rocks.
Well,
And I
you may
thought,
end up
okay,
having a lot of garter snakes coming in the
yeah.
next few,
So I'm hoping that becomes like this snake place.
Yeah.
We'll see, right? You don't know, like whatever conditions it is that they like, who knows if I provided it, because it's, you just never know exactly what they want. I don't know what they want. But I know if you have, a cavernous place, maybe that'll be the place. Anyway, I should wrap this up. So anyway, thanks for coming on and talking about organic gardens. I don't know exactly if we provided what people want to learn about this topic, but I think it's given people some, something to chew on anyway, and something to think about for those people that are, I mean, my viewers are backyard gardeners for the most part. No one's working on the scale you're working on. But I think for the backyard gardener, it shouldn't have to be an overwhelming goal to have an organic garden in their backyard. And if they're moving towards reading about permaculture, I think it's even easier.
Yep.
Because it's just going to be organic. Because it's like a, I don't know, what's that term? It's not the bug, it's the feature. So I don't know if organic gardening is the bug or the feature. If the permaculture is the feature, then organic gardening is the bug, sort of thing, because it's just going to happen, because there's nothing you're doing in your garden that is anything other than organic anyway, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the invite, Greg.
Yeah, no, and thanks. We just set this up today, so thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Everybody out there, I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. Hey, do you like getting free shipping? Then go to Vessies.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year, and use my coupon code GAVS24 to get free shipping, as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Vessies. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and you like free shipping, they sell something you need, buy it from them, use my coupon code. Happy gardening!